What's up guys, I'm Morley from Yellow Round Blog, and today for my tiny workshop, I'm going to show you how I made this denim-lined leather handbag. Let's get started.
I started by making an oversized paper template of the bag with extra room for waist. All the pieces for this project are cut out of 4 to 6 ounce veg tan leather. I cased the leather, then dyed the pieces with 3 coats of rich mahogany EcoFlow dye, alternating directions between coats. After they were dyed, I buffed each piece with an old shirt to even out the tone and remove excess dye pigment. Next, I cut the side pieces to their final dimensions and rounded their bottom edge where the body of the bag would wrap around. I used an old pair of jeans for the lining. If you're looking for cool material to line your leather projects, I would definitely recommend using old pants. You can get really big pieces just from a single pant leg, and it's a cheap way to get super sturdy, high quality material. To attach the denim lining to the leather, I applied contact cement to both pieces, allowed to dry for 30 to 40 minutes, and then firmly pressed the pieces together, paying extra attention to the edges. And just a pro tip, a Nalgene actually works great as a rolling pin, even without its tactical sheath. I used the same process to line the side pieces, and also to attach one of the jean back pockets to the large piece as an interior pocket for the handbag. I didn't bother to cut the lining to size until after it was attached to the leather. The thick leather actually works as a pretty solid edge to plant a blade against, leaving me with a nice uniform edge after trimming. Since the interior pocket is in a high wear area, I reinforced its upper corners with brass rivets. Before joining the pieces, I conditioned the leather to make bending it around the sides easier and avoid cracking. To attach the pieces, I ended up wet forming the side pieces with a plywood mold. So my original plan was to just bend the side pieces while gluing, but I ended up underestimating how stiff the lined leather would be. I got this idea from Jimmy DiResta's leather backpack video, and I'll throw a link to that in the description. I was then ready to glue up the basic handbag. This was a bit tricky, but having a ton of these little spring clamps was definitely key. After removing the clamps, I discovered that the bond between PVA glue and the porous denim wasn't actually very strong, so I ended up stitching as I made the holes to make sure that everything stayed aligned. I repeated this process for the other side. After that, I cut the oversized flap to its final size and shape and added a little roundover to the corners of the flap. I added a brass snap to fasten the bag shut. So a running challenge throughout this project was using punches on the bag after it was sewed into one closed object. And with my limited workbench setup, I solved this with various size scrapwood pieces like you see here. The first step of finishing the edges was evening up the leather and denim with a razor blade. I then sanded and beveled all of the external edges. I mixed up some black and brown edge coat to get a darkish brown and applied 2 coats to the edges, sanding in between. Of course, having a perfect rich mahogany edge coat would be ideal, but hey, you work with what you got. I used some scraps to make 2 leather loops to hold brass D-rings where the strap attaches to the bag. These loops got glued to the bag with contact cement since this area was well out of clamping range with my limited selection of fancy clamps. My initial idea for reinforcing these joints was to use rivets, but positioning the anvil was really difficult with my MacGyvered setup to hold the bag, so I ended up plugging the rivet hole and going with stitches. In the end, I think I like the look of stitches here better. The final part of this project was making the strap. I cut a long piece of leather and dyed this to match the rest of the bag. I shaped the ends of the strap to form loops for the brass swivel clasps, and then beveled and edge coated this portion since it would be more difficult to access later. In case you weren't sure, those dog leash clippy things are the swivel clasps. I too didn't know what they were called before this video. While this glue was drying, I cannibalized a belt for its buckle, which was the perfect size to match the bag. And just in case she's watching, and since she did give this belt to me as a gift, sorry Mom. When I cannibalized the belt, I discovered that this leather loop is actually just stapled together, so I decided to follow this construction method for my strap loop. Since I only used wimpy office staples, I reinforced this with a cross stitch. At this point, I could cut the strap into two sections, one for the belt buckle and the other longer piece to feed into the buckle. Next, I edge coated the shorter section of strap as well as my little makeshift loop. To attach the buckle, I first punched a series of holes to form a slot, and then cleaned this up with a file. I reinforced these joints with cross stitches. I really do love the look of the dark dyed leather with white cross stitches. Finally, I could finish the longer section of the strap. I shaped and beveled the end, and since this piece is so long, I hung it under my bed to more easily apply the edge coat. I then added holes so it could mate with the buckle.
I made this handbag as a piece to be auctioned in the Best Buddies annual charity art auction in Montreal. Best Buddies is a fantastic charity, and I'll link them in the description so you can find out a little more about the work they do. Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, be sure to check out the rest of my channel. I make all sorts of stuff for my tiny apartment workshop. And make sure to subscribe to YellRonBlog if you want to know when I come out with more videos in the future.